afternoon, everyone. I'm Anderson Cooper, live in Boston. This is our continuing live coverage of the terror attack here in Boston. I'm standing about 4 blocks from the scene of the center of a massive investigation right now.
And I'm Brooke Baldwin, also live here in Boston. What a past 24 hours it has been for doctors and nurses and these families here. Right here where I'm standing is Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. They are treating more than 24 victims from the bombings at the Marathon. We're going to talk to Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta about what we're hearing, why so many amputations, and we're learning more about the shrapnel that's been embedded in so many of these young people and older people's lower extremities. Anderson.
Yeah, and we're getting new information really by the minute here. There are brand new developments in the investigation and the hunt for the person or people responsible for this attack. We're learning more about the bombs themselves, including the likelihood that a timer was used. There had been a lot of questions whether this was something that would have been detonated by a cell phone. It seems likely, though not certain, according to law enforcement, that a timer was used. We'll get to all of that in a moment. But I do want to begin with the reality for many families that they are dealing with right now. For some, it will be intense therapy, adjusting to a life with fewer limbs. We're seeing a lot of lower limb amputations. Today, doctors spoke of being forced to finish the job of the bombs, amputating people's legs in order to save their lives. The latest at this hour, 3 people known dead, at least 174 injured, including 23 people who are critically injured. The stories of loss and pain, we keep learning new details. One runner's camera was rolling as she approached the finish line. Take a look. As loud as that blast was, it was in the silence that another witness felt the full impact of what she survived.
I got home last night at about 11 o'clock and started to break down because I'd been holding it in all day. I'd been trying to remain composed, but by the time I was trying to fall asleep, it was all hitting me. This was really real. And then waking up this morning and realizing it's not a nightmare, it actually happened.
There's also this mother of 5. The Boston Globe spoke with Liz Norden. Her 2 sons were in the stands at the finish line when the blast, 12 seconds apart, went off. Each son ultimately lost a part of his leg from the knee down, the Globe reports. Norden told the paper, quote, "I feel sick." One family from the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston may be bearing the worst of what happened nearly 24 hours ago. They had gathered to celebrate their father finishing the race. Instead, they suffered the loss of their child, 8-year-old Richard Martin, seen here in a Facebook photographs. He's one of the 3 people that we know have died. The Boston Globe tells Richard's story, quote, "One of the dead was an 8-year-old boy from Dorchester who had gone out to hug his dad after he crossed the finish line. The dad walked on. The boy went back to the sidewalk to join his mom and his little sister, and then the bomb went off." That little sister also injured, and the mother as well. That's what the Richards family is dealing with, obviously, that devastating loss. CNN's Gary Tuckman now is live in Dorchester with their story. Gary?
Hi, Anderson. This house behind me, this gray house, is where the Richard family lives. Very happy family, very popular. The block neighbors speak very highly of them. And yesterday, Bill Richard, the husband of the house, left early in the morning to go to Hopkinton, which is 26.2 miles from the finish line of the Boston Marathon, to run the race. And the other 4 members of the family, his wife, his 2 sons, and his daughter, went to the Prudential Center, John Hancock Building area of Boylston Street. That's where the finish line has been for dozens and dozens of years of the Boston Marathon, to wait for their dad to cross. And that's when disaster struck for this family. Little Martin Richard, 8 years old, killed when he went to greet his father after his father finished the Boston Marathon. It should have been an absolutely wonderful, unforgettable moment for this family. Instead, it's unforgettable in a very different way. The family has released a picture of their little boy. And this picture shows him, like lots of other little kids here in New England, he was a big Boston Bruins fan. The Bruins won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, created a whole new legion of fans, and here he is smiling at the Bruins game. That picture released by his father, who is in mourning right now, whose wife and whose daughter are also in the hospital, seriously wounded. Their other son wasn't hurt. Here's what the father, Bill Richard, has to say. He has released a statement, and this is what it reads. "My dear son Martin has died from injuries sustained in the attack on Boston. My wife and daughter are both recovering from serious injuries. We thank our family and friends, those we know and those we have never met, for their thoughts and prayers. I ask that you continue to pray for my family as we remember Martin. We also ask for your patience and for privacy as we work to simultaneously grieve and recover. Thank you. There's also another picture that's been released, and this picture is very, very hard to look at, not because it's grotesque, but because it's so beautiful. This is what happened last year. This little boy was in 2nd grade, and he was going on a peace walk to promote peace in the city of Boston. And this is what he was holding in his hand. Martin Richard holding a sign that said, "No more hurting people, peace." And there were 2 hearts and a peace sign on that little sign that this little boy, who has now passed away, was holding last year when he was just in the 2nd grade. Right next door to this gray house, a neighbor who has known this family as long as they've lived here. We talked to her a short time ago. She saw the father when he came home last night. And at that point, she wasn't clear, Jane Sherman is her name, she wasn't clear exactly what had happened.
I saw him get out of the passenger seat, and he looked like he was in a state of shock, and I said, "Bill," he didn't answer me. He just walked very slowly into the house. So his friend came over, and I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "No. Martin was the little boy that was killed." And I was speechless, and I think he probably said something about Denise and the little girl, but I was really...
His wife and daughter.
Right, and I was in such a state of shock, I didn't even hear what he said. I started to cry, and I said, "If there's anything I can do, please just let him know I am here, and please send him my deepest sympathy."
Okay. I want to bring us a news conference that's happening right now. First responders, public safety officials. Let's listen in.
Seek out and bring to justice those terrorists who sought to destroy our city. We therefore ask anyone who has information that may be helpful in this investigation to please contact the Boston Police Homicide Unit at 617-343-4470. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Our next speaker today is the president of the Boston Firefighters Local 718, Rich Paris. President Paris.
Thank you, Eddie. To the families of this tragedy, our hearts are with them during this trying time. We took care of the victims yesterday, and we want to take care of them moving forward. We hope that this fund will give us just a little bit of comfort in the days moving forward. The Boston First Responders Fund for the victims of the Boston Marathon terrorism attack will be administered to the Boston Firefighter Credit Union. 100% of these proceeds will go to the victims. Anyone who would like to make a donation, please send all donations to the Boston Firefighters Credit Union, 60 Hallett Street, Dorchester, Mass. 02124. I say again, Boston Firefighters Credit Union, 60 Hallett Street, Dorchester, Mass. 02124. People can make donations by check or online through the credit union's website. That's at www.bosfirecu.com. There's also a credit union phone number. It is 1-857-220-0133. As the president of the Boston Firefighters Local 718, I am proud to stand together with my brothers from the Boston Police Unions and Boston EMS Union to take care of the victims of this tragedy. At this time, I would like to say God bless the victims and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. Before we take any questions, I'd just like you to join us in a moment of silence for the victims of yesterday's terrorist attack. Any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about how your ranks are doing, as well as Jamie?
Yeah, sure.
Such a mass casualty situation.
Obviously, it's very difficult for us. We're human beings like anybody else, and we're not immune to dealing with grief and the tragedy that we had to deal with yesterday. But we do have critical incident stress management teams working with those of us that responded and worked yesterday. And I can tell you that, unfortunately, in our profession, we do deal with this quite a bit, although yesterday's scene was particularly horrific. But I have all the faith in the world and confidence that our brothers and sisters will do well. If anyone else have any questions? No? All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and God bless America.
You've been listening
press
to
conference from first responders, public safety officials offering a $50,000 reward for information on the bombings. Obviously, there is a massive investigation going on right now. They were able to secure the crime scene relatively quickly, and that is certainly something that's going to aid law enforcement in their investigation. I want to get the latest, though, on where the investigation stands right now, the search for who might have done this, the person or persons or group responsible, foreign or domestic. A federal law enforcement official telling CNN's Susan Candiotti that the bombs in yesterday's attack appear to have been placed inside metal pressure cookers and hidden inside backpacks. Another source tells our CNN's Joe Johns that it's likely, but not certain, but likely that a timing device was used to activate the bombs. Not a cellular device, but a timing device. Dozens of forensic specialists and dogs trained to detect explosive residue are at the blast scene today, where the two bombs exploded just seconds apart. President Obama calling it an act of terror, but he noted that no person or group, foreign or domestic, has claimed responsibility for the attacks. At this point, joining me now is Jeffrey Beatty. He's a security consultant. He's also trained with the Boston Police SWAT team. Thank you very much for being with us. What we know now about the bomb, apparently in a pressure cooker device, both devices hidden in a backpack, low to the ground, perhaps placed on the street. What do you make of what you're hearing about the devices?
Well, I'm alarmed by what I'm hearing about the devices, because I got back last year after 9 months in Afghanistan, and these pressure cookers are a technique that is used by the Taliban and by Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. They're very effective weapons. They try to pick these pressure cookers up wherever they can, and they use them to make their IEDs. And I'm quite concerned that this is a TTP, as we would call it in the military.
TTP?
Tactic, technique, and I'm lost with the P. But the TTPs are procedures, are things of the Taliban that we're now seeing here. Now, that doesn't mean it was the Taliban. Other people can read about this.
Right. We've also heard these are, relatively crude devices that are available on the internet. People can kind of learn how to make them.
You can learn how to make them, which doesn't rule out an international terrorist, because you certainly don't need to bring the materials to make this weapon into the country. They're here. You can make it right here. They are crude. That's what the Taliban makes, crude IEDs. But again, in the past, people have rushed to judgment as to who is behind attacks like this, so I think we'll let the evidence play out, but it certainly is an indicator of a potential, either someone who's read about how the Taliban makes these weapons, or perhaps a stronger link.
It would have been an aid to law enforcement had they actually found unexploded devices, as was reported, and even some officials were saying had been found yesterday, where they're now confirming just the two devices that exploded are the only devices. There were not any other unexploded. So it becomes all the more harder to figure out the signature of these devices, the manufacturer of them.
That's absolutely right. But they will get it. I mean, we have great forensic capability. I'm also a former special agent of the FBI, and they will determine where the signatures come from. It may be it's a new signature. They may not have seen this before.
Bomb makers have an actual kind of signature in how they make.
Where they were trained. That the signature is basically the way they maybe do their wiring. It may not narrow it down to one individual, but it may narrow it down to a specific bomb trainer who has trained these people to do it, or it may narrow it down to a website that gives specific instructions on how to do it. So whoever may have accessed that website, and that'll be a thread that law enforcement will be pulling on to look back at who may have accessed these websites that show specifically how this type of bomb may have been made.
We're also now hearing that it's likely, not certain, but likely from a law enforcement source, that it was a timing device, not a cellular device. They are going to be checking all cell phones, any calls that were made from the region. But that, again, is a relatively crude way to do a bomb.
It's crude, but it's effective. And one of the things I suspected yesterday was that it was on a timer. And I think that we probably were lucky that the casualties were as few few as they were. I think that that's an indication of mitigating factors, the active presence of the Boston Police Department. No doubt the individual who placed these bombs was getting anxious about, my God, this event is almost over. When am I going to get these bombs placed? And so therefore, they placed the bombs. They didn't have the opportunity to aim them properly because the casualties really, Anderson, with this type of attack should have been an order of magnitude greater. There should have been 20 or 30 people killed.